On today's show, why this summer could finally be the time for the Ottawa Senators to sign Shane Pinto to a long-term contract.
And we continue with our 2025 NHL draft rankings with prospect profiles for players 46 and 45.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Today is Monday, May 26th, and Pilsy, congratulations are in order to Shane Pinto, a gold medalist at the World Championships.
Ross, I cannot believe that for the first time in 92 years, Team USA is bringing home the men's world's gold trophy. That just seems like an impossible stat. 92 years and USA hasn't won gold at men's world. I guess all they needed was the Shane Pinto point luck factor, and it certainly worked out for them this time.
And Shane Pinto was battling through an illness earlier on in the tournament, was the 13th forward at times, but still was able to produce 10 points at this year's World Championships, a huge factor in Team USA's success. And yes, the Pinto point stat does, in fact, extend to the World Championships. He had 10 points in 8 games, 2 goals, 2 penalty minutes, and was a +9. Team USA in the last 2 World Championships, both attended by Shane Pinto, of course. When he has a point, they are 10-0-1.
And Ross, surely we know the Shane Pinto point factor works its magic in the NHL. We now know it works its magic at the World Championship, but there's no possible way we could have predicted that when Shane Pinto gets points that his team is successful. There's no way in college with the Nodak Sens he still had that going, did he?
You can, yes. Ted McGregor looked it up. It's been confirmed by our good friend Brad Schlossman. When Shane Pinto had a point at North Dakota, the 2 years he was there, 34-5-3 record. And also I looked up his World Juniors, 2-1-0. The one loss came against Canada. So that means overall, since being drafted by the Ottawa Senators in the second round in 2019, his teams have a record of 112, 18, and 11. When he contributes at least a point, that means almost 80% of the time he gets a point, the team wins the game. Not gets a point in the game, wins the game outright. Truly a ridiculous, barbaric statistic, maybe the wildest one we've ever tracked here at Locked On Senators. Look, this is the 3rd year in a row we've had this conversation about a Shane Pinto contract. 2 summers ago, it was, wow, coming off of his entry-level contract, but there was a lot of factors too. Had shoulder surgery his first year, was held to 5 games. Then he played pretty well, I would say. And it looked like a situation where it's like, okay, because he burned that first year off with 12 games played, then only played 5. That means the first 2 years of his entry level, he played a total of 17 games. Well, he played all 82 in the third one, had 20 goals, 35 points, but was a big-time dash because he played with Alex DeBrincat. And then the unpredictable happened. The suspension for being involved, and it's nothing, I don't think, nefarious, but I do think it was a learning lesson to all NHL players. They made an example out of Shane Pinto, the fantasy football, the betting, proxy gambling. Anyways, that's in the past, but because of that, after the suspension, he ended up just signing a league minimum contract, and then he came back and played pretty well in the 41 games for the Senators. 27 points, was +9, but there's Pilsy preaching patience, saying give him a bridge deal, and they did. Pinto last summer signed a 2-year extension at $3.75 million. He's halfway through it, so he's already signed for this upcoming season, but they can negotiate with him beginning July 1st. Do you believe that Steve Staios would be smart to get ahead of the game here and look at locking up Shane Pinto beyond next season?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, Ross, if you decide to wait on this contract, it only benefits Shane Pinto. I feel like he's going to have another big year. He just had a big world championship. The Ottawa Senators are in a different cycle of their organization. They made the playoffs for the first time in 7 years. They have the pieces and the makings of a team that can be a lot more successful than they had been in the past. And Shane Pinto is a big part of that. And I think Steve Staios, the coaching staff, everybody around realizes the role that Shane Pinto has to play. And I think definitely you don't want to be going into next offseason without an extension done.
So what kind of extension would you be offering Shane Pinto right off the bat?
Well, I almost feel like we should start with your idea, Ross, and then I'll rebuttal, because as per usual, when it comes to contract extensions and deals, I feel like you and I have different approaches. So why don't you lead off with your opinion and your idea that you already voiced on Twitter, and we'll start the discussion there.
At Sens Central on Twitter, I was replying to our good friend Jack Richardson, Postcast Squad member, and he said, what kind of contract would you offer Shane Pinto? What would you be comfortable with? So this isn't my original offer to Shane Pinto, but should negotiations get tense, I would be willing to go 7 years at $7 million per season. Now, stay on the road, guys. Keep two hands on the wheel. There's a thought process behind this. One, the importance of Shane Pinto on this team. Second in ice time among forwards in the playoffs, just seconds behind Tim Stützle. The way that you build through the center of the ice with this organization, you need Shane Pinto locked up. Why $7 million? Well, the easy answer is you need to forget what $7 million was last season and even what it's going to be this upcoming season. The NHL salary cap this past year was $88 million. For the year that we're talking here, the first year of that extension would be the 2026-27 season. The cap's going to be $104 million. Not a math guy, but that's a $16 million increase, which means you have to look at comparables based on their cap hit percentage, not the actual money. So I don't think it's crazy that $7 million would have to be the price to get it done on a long-term deal, because the last point I'll make on my original argument here is these contract years you're getting for Shane Pinto would be age 26 to 32, the absolute prime of this player's career.
Yeah, and those are all fair points, and I don't necessarily disagree with any of them, Ross. I got a couple questions, though. During this 7-year deal you're hypothetically offering him, at any point, do you anticipate him becoming this team's second-line center?
I think 2A, 2B. I mean, in terms of ice time, he was this team's second-line center. That's where I think we have
in the playoffs.
He was fifth on the team in ice time among forwards. If you take out Josh Norris, sixth either way. That's a top six forward in terms of ice time. I got a lot of pushback on the points. 37 points this year. We know he was playing through an injury early on in the season. He finished the season with 34 points in his last 50 games. That's almost a 50-point pace. Forget 40. And the role he was in, he's playing against the other team's best players every single night. And in those last 50 games, when he took on that role mostly, he was a plus 19 on the season as well. So I find it tough to evaluate Shane Pinto based on points when they took him off the power play and gave him a role that he has played to perfection. You can't then turn around and use points against him in a contract negotiation.
No, that's fair. But so you're saying for most of the contract, he's going to be a third line center that plays more of an elevated role than a typical third line center. Am I getting that right?
He will be your second most important centerman.
You're answering this like a politician, which I can't follow you. You're doing
Shane, if you need a new agent, buddy, give me a call.
Yep, nice. Then I would look at, okay, what are some comparable contracts in the league? Now, the difficult thing is you got to find a centerman that's playing third line center role. I'm putting that in quotations for a politician Ross here. And you got to find a guy that signed a deal recently. Because like Ross said, what millions of dollars are now will not be the same percentage of the cap as it will be moving forward. So you can't look at a guy that signed a deal 2-3 years ago and say, well, the money matches here, so you got to go with that. You got to be looking at cap percentage. So that's a good point you brought up. The most comparable and relatable deal I could find, Ross, and let me know if you think I'm on or off on this one, Anton Lundell. Would you say they're similar players?
I have his page pulled up right here, but Lundell signed that contract at 22 years old. Shane Pinto will be 24, 25, signing a deal that will start at 26.
Yeah, but again, politician answer. Would you say that they are similar players?
I would, yes.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of impact, for sure.
Yeah, third line centers with more of a defensive role that put up decent points. Like, the points is not what you're highlighting for either of these players. Anton Lundell signed that deal last summer, and he signed a 6-year deal, $6-year deal, $5 million average cap hit. So first you got to look at, this is Florida, so it's tax-free state. This is a Stanley Cup contender, so they're probably able to get guys to agree to lower dollar amounts.
Yeah, he signed this contract a week and a half after winning the Stanley Cup.
Exactly. So I'm bringing up the points that make it not so comparable, but I think this is the range. And another guy I looked at, Ross, ironically also in Florida, Anthony Cirelli. I would say also similar type player, similar type role. I believe his deal, you can fact check me, Ross, it was a 7-year deal at 6.25.
And they signed him a year out early, I believe, as well, because I think him and Nick Paul signed pretty close together. Anthony Cirelli is making $6.25 million per season. He's in year 3 of an 8-year deal. So this one was signed a couple of years ago.
So I think those are two really nice comparable options. Now, it does make it difficult, them being in Florida, but I think, Ross, for Shane Pinto, you want to find somewhere in that range. For me, $7 million is too much. All your points that you raised were valid, but I don't want to go up to $7 million. So the way I would do that is also 7 years is too much. The only players you can be signing to 7, 8, or 8-year deals are your number one defenseman, Jake Sanderson, your number one center, Tim Stützle, and your top winger, Brady Tkachuk. I believe every other player, really, you should not be signing to more than 6 years, because you need that flexibility. Even if you think it's going to allow you to bring the cap down, or even if you believe that this player is going to get better and he's going to be a big part of this team moving forward, even beyond 6 years, that's all fine. You need the flexibility to work around your other players that aren't your cornerstone guys. So for me, I'm looking at a 5-year deal for Shane Pinto, and somewhere between $5.5 and $6.5 million. If you get a 5-year deal, $6 million per, nice even $30 million contract for Shane Pinto, that's more what I'm looking at. I just think that's more aligned with comparable contracts and what his role on this team will be. And also, I'm a believer in Shane Pinto. I think that's good. Like $6 million a year is good value. And I think that's going to nicely align with how he's going to develop with this time with the Ottawa Senators. So Ross is going 7 by 7. I'm going 5 years by $6 million.
All right. Well, I want to continue this conversation, but let us know in the comments right now how you feel about the Shane Pinto contract situation. Again, you can kick the can down the road for one more year. Pinto is an RFA at the end of this contract, but we got way more to get into on this topic. Then we'll get to our draft profiles. The first Nepo baby of this year's countdown. And we got a humongous defenseman. Do you see a trend of the players we picked to profile? You're Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, entertainment. It's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And even someone like Ross can use Monarch Money. So if Ross can use Monarch Money, so can you. It's not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, just use one. Use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and plan your long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all that stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at the GLEBE Central Pub. It's the conference finals in the NHL and the NBA. And if you're looking for a spot that lives and breathes hockey, the GLEBE Central Pub is the spot for you. Right in the heart of the Glebe, just steps from Lansdowne. It's the perfect place to catch every game, every night. Great food and drinks and even better company. The GCP is more about just catching the big game as well. There's something happening almost every night that you want to get into. Start your night with wings every Monday, all day and all night. Trivia night goes Tuesday. Bring your crew and put that knowledge to the test. Wednesdays, it's open mic night, whether you play, sing, or just want to kick back and listen. Great way to celebrate Hump Day. Thursdays, all about cheap tacos, of course. Saturday, live music with no cover ever. We're counting down the days to CFL season as well, and GLEBE Central Pub will be the place to be when the Red Blacks kick off things in June. Whether it's playoff hockey, live music, or just a night out with friends, make GLEBE Central Pub your home base because, as you know, the vibes are free at the GCP. All right, Pilsy, this is contentious, and I feel it has been for the last 3 years. I've been a believer in Shane Pinto since it's North Dakota. I even remember putting up a poll in 2020 saying, who's got the higher ceiling, Josh Norris or Shane Pinto? And I think that the answer was 92% in favor of Josh Norris. And I was one of those 8%ers out there that just believe that a 6'3" right shot centerman that plays both ends of the ice, has an elite shot, and behind the scenes gets things done. When he gets a point, the team wins. He's also a huge part of the locker room culture in Ottawa, and I do believe Shane Pinto should be a Senator for the entirety of his career. Now, you make fair points, and I think that Steve Staios would love to get Shane Pinto signed to a contract under $6.5 million per season. But Pilsy, answer me this.
Okay.
Who's the better player, Shane Pinto or Dylan Cousins?
I mean, it's tough because Dylan Cousins is going to produce more points, probably.
He did this past season for sure.
And he has a 30 for 30 season under his belt, 30 goals, 30 assists. So right now, Ross, I'll say Dylan Cousins.
Okay. I would just, if I see that number for Dylan Cousins, I'm using that if I'm Shane Pinto, and I'm saying, well, if he's making more than my client, why is my client playing more every single night, matched up against harder competition, taking a number of blocked shots on the penalty kill? He's even scoring 3 shorthanded goals for you last year, and he's second on the team in even strength goals behind Tim Stützle.
You know what Steve Staios' answer to that is, Ross?
What's that?
I didn't sign that contract. That's not how we negotiate.
That's a good point, but clearly they were comfortable having that contract on the books. I guess he'd say that they save money on a comparable player. So that's a fair point. I'm so curious to see, but I really think Shane Pinto needs to get a contract done this season. If you're Pinto, though, I think you want term. You want 7 or 8 years. All players want the security. But after what he went through, with not knowing what his next deal would look like and then battling through the suspension and how everything shook out there, how much money did he lose that season?
It was what, like 500 grand, maybe more?
Probably way more. He signed for $800K, dude, on a half season. So
Yeah, that
$400K in real money. We were talking about
Yeah.
him being a $3 million player.
Yeah, fair. I thought you meant literally because he signed a $800,000 deal and missed
Right.
that year. So literally he missed out on 400,000. But yeah, figuratively it would have been more for sure.
Yes, a lot more. And his value, I don't think, can be overstated with what he does for this team. Shane Pinto is a +10 this past season, 37 points in 70 games, 26 penalties as well, 50% face-off guy. And as we keep hammering home, his role was not to be a point producer. His role was to shut down the other team's top point producers. And yet he still was able to get 21 goals, 16 of them at even strength. So Shane Pinto, certainly a guy who I think the organization has value for. I wonder, though, to put my Senators organization cap on.
So the hat you're wearing right now?
Yeah, but I wonder how it enters negotiations where who like, does Shane Pinto have a level of trust in the organization based on how they supported him through the process of the suspension? I think some teams maybe would have been like, okay, we're done with this guy. But Michael Andlauer, not even the GM, but Michael Andlauer came out in support of Shane Pinto after that whole situation. I think there's the side of the team being like, hey, we could have used you for the first half of that. You kind of let us down. But also, I think it shows the player that the team really does feel the family aspect of what he can bring to the table. So it's going to be fascinating. And I think that the bridge deals are done, right? Even though your thoughts of a long-term deal are a bit different than the maximum that you can go, 8 years with a player on your own team, 7 years on a contract if you're acquiring a player in free agency. It's time for a long-term contract for Shane Pinto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't do another bridge deal. You don't build a bridge on top of a bridge, Ross. Once the bridge has been built, you're on to a different island or landmass there. So Shane Pinto has moved on from that. He's got his bridge built.
And if someone knows about bridges, why not Shane Pinto? The guy's from Long Island, New York.
Yeah, there we go. He's an expert on bridges.
Shane Pinto is not an unrestricted free agent until 2028, by the way. So the long-term contract aspect of it, they're still going to be buying up 2 UFA years in their, or RFA years rather, in the next contract. And usually those come in a little bit lower than the unrestricted free agent contract. So let us know your thoughts on Shane Pinto. If a contract gets done, what is too much? At what point would you say, oh, grit your teeth a little bit? For me, it'd be anything over $7 million per season. Pilsy closer to 6.5. All right, Pilsy, you got one more final thought on that?
If you're going to 7 years, then I would be more comfortable getting close to 7. I'm just saying, I don't think it's responsible is not the right word, but I don't think it's the most ideal situation to put a player like Shane Pinto into a 7-year deal. But if you were to go there, then yes, the AAV, I would be comfortable moving up. But I think, Ross, year 7x7 would be the max that I would be comfortable with. And look at Steve Staios, Ross. Look at the deal he gave Ridley Gregg, right? That kind of shows me, obviously, Shane Pinto, a bigger impact player than Ridley Gregg. I'm not suggesting more proven. Yeah, definitely. But I think Steve Staios knows, or at least is showing, that he doesn't want to just give out massive long-term deals to everyone to lock people down or to save on the AAV. He's trying to build and structure his roster so that he will have some flexibility. And look at the free agent deals he signed, Ross. 2 years for David Perron, 3 years for Michael Amadio. Like, I do believe that Staios and the executive team have the mindset that we can't be locking other guys down other than our cornerstone players for more than 4 or 5 years. So that's also why I had that approach with Pinto.
And even after acquiring Linus Ullmark, a 4-year extension for him. But that, again, was on the heels of still having that year left, and it was a 4-year contract for Ridley Gregg. All right, Pillsy, are we getting a rematch of the Stanley Cup Finals from last season?
I mean, it's a little too early to say that on the Western side. The Eastern side, I mean, the Carolina Hurricanes are allergic to conference final wins. Like this is becoming concerning here if you're a fan of this team being like, well, this is our cap. This is our limit. Going past the second round, we don't get any more wins after that, even though they're a good team, well coached, good goaltending, no injury problems. So I don't know what they're going to do. But in having said that, the Florida Panthers are an amazing team, and there's a reason why they're going to be going to their third Stanley Cup final.
15 straight conference final losses for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Some franchises, Ross, a lot of franchises don't even have 15 conference final games played, let alone losses.
Yeah. Isn't that outrageous? 15 straight. Wow.
Insane.
All right, let's get to our draft profiles on the other side. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. All right, Pilsy, it is a month and 1 day away. The NHL draft from Los Angeles. Next week, the NHL and all the players in the top 100 on the NHL Central Scouting Rankings will meet in Buffalo to go through the NHL Scouting Combine, and that's a huge week for rumors. So we'll have that all for you here. When you get all 32 organizations together, all the decision makers and the prospects, you start to get a feel for what your list is going to look like on draft night. There will be shaking and grooving, probably over a couple of cold ones, and you never know if there's going to be a deal to be made or conversations and seeds that could become deals closer to the NHL draft. All right, Pilsy, let's get back to our NHL draft rankings here on the Locked On Senators podcast. Coming in at number 46, a very interesting story with William Horcoff playing left wing at the University of Michigan. He grew up as a centerman, just like his dad, Sean Horcoff, long-time NHLer, most notably, I'd say, with the Edmonton Oilers. And now William is already done half a season of college hockey, even though it was a surprising decision for him to move halfway through the year from the USNTDP.
Yeah, Ross, I'm trying to think of and you would know this better than I would, through our entire experience of prospect profiles, have we ever seen a player leave the NTDP in the middle of a season?
Not that I can remember. This is a pretty unique case, and it's an earlier birthday. William Horcoff is born in January, and the way he explained it in a feature we watched this morning was that they obviously do school at the USNTDP, and he was able to fast track his high school education to be able to graduate. And once that happened, he saw there was an opportunity for him to fast track his commitment to Michigan. They wanted him. He wanted to be there. And ipso facto, you've got a guy who jumped in and ended up playing in the second half of the season, 18 games for the Michigan Wolverines, had 4 goals, 10 points, -4 and 6 penalty minutes. And he kind of tapered off towards the end of the season, kind of came in guns blazing, had the adrenaline, if you will, when he made the jump, had a goal and an assist in his first game in only 9 minutes and 19 seconds. And that game was outdoors.
Yeah.
Like, it was just completely a perfect start for William Horcoff. And then in his third game gets an assist, fourth game gets an assist, and then a goal in his fifth game. So he jumped out with 5 points in his first 5 games of college hockey, and then only had 5 in his last 13.
Yeah, and I think, Ross, when he was with the program, I believe he was playing center, and I don't think things were really working out the way maybe he thought, or maybe the way the program thought, and maybe this is just speculation. I don't know this, but I assume there was probably a mutual decision to be like, hey, this isn't working out the best for either side. If you want to fast track or go the school route to Michigan earlier, I think that might benefit both parties here. And I mean, 10 points in 18 games is pretty good. Like you mentioned, hot start. But William Horcoff is an interesting player because he's got that size. What do we have him as, Ross? 6'4", 181. Like, he's a big kid. And he's more of a power forward type player. He uses his size to battle in front of the net. He's able to score through banging away at rebounds or deflecting the puck in. He does have some decent playmaking skills, but really, Ross, I think this is going to be a guy that's going to be a net front presence on the second power play unit, because I think he's got to work on improving his pace. Both Scott Wheeler and Corey Pronman concerned about his pace of play. And I do think that he's going to have to find ways to score goals and get shots from farther than just a couple feet within the slot.
His shooting percentage is great, though. He's got a plus shot, in my opinion, as a prospect. And Corey Pronman is the highest on him out of all of our scouts. Craig Button has him at 42. Pronman at 30, by the way. Bob McKenzie on his midterms had him at 50. Scott Wheeler at 54. McKean's at 61. And Elite Prospects at 64. I would say maybe a lower ceiling than others in this range, but I do think he's a pro hockey player, just from the build, the maturity, I'm sure, learning from his dad over the years, who also played a hard-nosed, gritty style of game. He's going to find his way into an NHL role. I don't know when it will be, but if you draft this player, I think you're penciling him in a bottom 6 role maybe 4 years down the road.
Yeah, that's kind of where I've got him, Ross. I think he's going to improve a lot now that he's at Michigan and now that he knows he's going to be there. I think that switch in the middle of the season probably is tough on a kid at this stage in their development. I got him as a middle 6 winger. This isn't a guy I think the Sens should target, though. They've got big left shot players in their system, and I think he's going to go in the middle of the second round. So I don't see really the fit here for the Sens. I got him at 3 out of 5 stars.
Do you think this is a situation where he's in Ann Arbor at the program, he's at Michigan? Oh, his dad is in management with the Detroit Red Wings, who have a very deep prospect pool. What I'm getting at not only is the fact that it's pretty common for players, not always their sons, but players with relationships to their NHL teams end up somehow finding their way there. But I also think that William Horcoff should go to a team that already has top-end talent in their prospect pool, where he's not going to be expected to be a top 3 prospect in a prospect pool. Just fit in and be a role player at the next level.
Yeah, I think maybe a contending team that's trying to really take a home run swing on a pick because they have a shallow prospect pool maybe wouldn't go this route. But Ross, to spin zone it, maybe that is a team that would pick him, because they could be like, look, he's got the size. His dad was a longtime pro. He's developing at a good school in Michigan. So maybe this is a guy we can get in our bottom 6 playing on an entry-level deal to save us some money. So it depends on what approach you have here. But yeah, he's an interesting prospect for sure.
Well, we know that Senators general manager Steve Staios would know William Horcoff well. He's probably running around the dressing room in Edmonton when those two played together. Both were a part of the Oilers' run to a Stanley Cup final in 2006. Sean Horcoff, William's dad, played for the Oilers from 2000 all the way until 2013, whereas Steve Staios was with the Oilers for a good portion of that. Staios was with the Oilers from 2001 until 2010. So they pretty much coincided their time. So Steve Staios would have a good sense of the person that William Horcoff is. And we know that he's the type of player that NHL teams do covet, from the fact that he's got bloodlines all the way to the fact that he is a hard-nosed player. So with an average ranking of 50.17, William Horcoff comes into our draft rankings at number 46. All right, coming in at number 45 on Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, we are going to the USHL for another monster defenseman. This time it's Jacob Rombach, an April 2007 birthday, just turned 18 years old. Not only is he 6'6", he's over 200 pounds, left shot defenseman, and he's committed to the University of Minnesota, where he will begin his college hockey journey in the fall.
Yep, he spent time in the USHL so far, his second season last year with the Lincoln Stars. In 57 games, he had 3 goals, 15 assists, good for 18 points, a plus 29. So that's pretty big, especially Ross, considering that his first year with the Lincoln Stars, he finished a -8 in 59 games. He got to spend some time in the playoffs again, 7 games, no points, -2. So maybe not the showing that he would hope, but it's important to know with Jacob Rombach that he's a defensive, shutdown, stay-at-home defenseman. So you're not necessarily going to be looking at the point totals as a way to properly evaluate this player.
And I know we're not always looking at plus minus as the be-all, end-all statistic, whether it's with prospects or with NHL players, but it is worth noting that Rombach was a plus 29 this season with the Lincoln Stars. So he is a reliable defensive defenseman here. And in the rankings, we've got a twofer for the people in the top 35. We are adding on Sebastian High. He is the host of the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast. He also works as the USHL scout for elite prospects. We've got the EP ranking separate, but Sebastian does a great job following the USHL. And in his original top 32 here that he sent us, he's got Rombach at 28, which is higher than anybody else. Craig Button has him at 34, and then there's a bit of a gap, 41 for elite prospects, 57 for Bob McKenzie. McKean's has him at 73. Scott Wheeler, an honorable mention just outside of his top 80, and Corey Pronman doesn't have him ranked at all. So if you're an NHL team and you're considering drafting Jacob Rombach, what are you hoping that it accomplishes down the road?
Well, you're looking at a defensive defenseman. I think he projects as a third pair shutdown defenseman that kills penalties. What teams are going to like about him, Ross, is the frame right off the bat. You talked about it, 6'6", 201. He's a smooth, straight line skater for his size. He will join the play from time to time, but that's not like pinching and playing an offensive game. Joining the rush isn't really his thing. I watched his highlights of all his points with the Lincoln Stars, and again, this is a defensive. Most of his assists were secondary, kind of just moving the play along, which eventually turned into a goal, not really necessarily setting up the goal, or a shot from the point that was deflected or blocked, and then they score on the rebound. So I actually think he got some pretty good puck luck when it comes to the 15 assists he got this season. Not trying to take anything away from him, but just what I noticed. And it can be tough, Ross, to try to evaluate defensive defenseman prospects because, look, I don't think it'll surprise people. I was not attending Lincoln Stars games this year. I didn't have any live looks at Jacob Rombach. So you're going off the highlights, which I watched, but those are only going to show goals and assists typically, or maybe sometimes big hits, things like that. So from reading other people's work about covering him, they say that he's got a good gap control. He blocks shots. He uses his size, that 6'6" frame, to poke pucks away and really do a good job of driving players wide with his reach. However, when you're this size at this age, you should be physically dominating other players' opponents. You should be a physical presence. You should be a towering force that guys are terrified to go in a board battle with or skate down your side of the ice. Unfortunately, that's not the case with Rombach. From what I've been reading, Ross, a lot of scouts are saying they got to see him bump up that physical play if you've got the size like that. And if you're going to be a shutdown defenseman, impose your will with your size as well. So that's one thing I think he's going to really have to work on. But I mean, lots of time to work on that for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because it almost feels like he only uses his size advantage as a reach instead of a physically imposing type defenseman. I don't think this is going to be an Ottawa Senators draft pick. Wait, I don't think it should be an Ottawa Senators draft pick. We know that the physical profile does lead into where the Sens have gone before. However, not a plus skater at this point. Like, I don't think his skating is his number one attribute or even close to it. His gap control is good and everything, but I don't think that this is the type of player the Senators should be targeting at any point in this draft. Pilsy, your Sens stars as we wrap up our conversation on Jacob Rombach.
Yeah, I got him going at the late second round. For me, that's not a range the Sens are going to be in. So for Rombach, I got him at 3 stars. I do think, Ross, that this is going to be a guy that in his mid to late 20s is going to figure it out and is going to find a way to play minutes on an NHL team. But I think that's going to be a team that already has some high-end defenseman prospects. Maybe they take him as like an insurance pick, being like, hey, at least we've got a guy that we think is a very safe pick, high floor, low ceiling type. And I don't think that's a player the Ottawa Senators should be targeting.
Jacob Rombach with an average ranking of 46.6 comes in at number 45 on our Locked On Senators countdown of the top prospects in the 2025 NHL draft. All right, Pills, any final thoughts on today's show?
Yes, final thoughts for me, Ross, is the PWHL Finals rolls on, and man, you want 2 teams that are closely battling in the finals of any sport? Well, the PWHL has found that, because all 3 games have not only gone to overtime, Ross, but they've been 2-1 scores. The Ottawa Charge last 4 games, including them beating Montreal to get to the finals, was also a 2-1 game. So if I'm a gambling man going on FanDuel, I might throw a couple shekels on this being a 2-1 final, but it's got to be in the Ottawa Charge favor, because if they lose, that's it. The Frost will take home their second title, back-to-back champs. So let's get that 2-1 overtime win in Ottawa's favor and bring it back to TD Place for the finale.
I don't know if Ottawa hockey fans can handle another overtime game. The last one was triple OT, and they already had a quadruple OT as well in the Montreal series. So credit to Gwyneth Phillips, the goaltender. She's an absolute star in the making, up for the Rookie of the Year in the PWHL, and she was awesome in that game against Minnesota. They got outshot 47-36, including 20-9 in the first 2 periods. And 2-1 was the final score there. The Walter Cup will be in the building tonight. And if you're watching the game in Ontario, it is a 5:00 start. It is Memorial Day in the United States. So they are going to be, it's a 4:00 local time game from the XL Energy Center. And look, I mean, no disrespect by this, but the PWHL is much better when it's being played in Ottawa. I mean, there's something about the crowd being full. I get that. I think the attendance was pretty similar in the 2, but we've been to the XL Energy Center. That is an enormous building. It just doesn't have the same feel as the TD Place Arena at Lansdowne after a couple cold ones at the Glebe Central Pub. It's just not quite the same. Ottawa's a different breed. So let's make sure that there's another home game for the Ottawa Charge. If the Charge win tonight, then they will be hosting the 5th and deciding game. I think this series, as you mentioned, 3 overtimes, it deserves a 5th and final game. So go Charge, go Ottawa hockey, man. I love that the city is alive and well, cheering on the PWHL. All right, Pillsy, another great show. I'm still buzzing off that Shane Pinto conversation. Really hope that there's a deal to be made this summer to keep him in Ottawa long term. For today, we say goodbye. Thank you for watching, listening, and engaging with the show. If you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up below. If you really enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe on all your favorite audio podcast platforms, as well as here on YouTube. You can leave a 5-star review. They all go a long way to helping the show grow. We'll be back tomorrow with more on our countdown and lots of Sens coverage. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.